It is February 26th, 2026, coming to you from Dallas, Texas. So we're going to start this podcast off by looking at these recent stories from the last couple of days in which several mosques were attacked, two in the United States, one in Manchester, and then another in the West Bank, where also IDF soldiers looked on as a U.S. citizen, a Palestinian American, was shot. So you can go ahead and look at the individual stories for yourself, right? But this is going to be a footnote that I'm going to be calmly delivering, and I'll be reflecting on this moment in the years ahead, right? This period in which we saw multiple attacks on mosques, on innocent people, at a moment in time in which we're seeing these vile calls for basically street violence towards Muslims, and not only in the UK, but also the United States and Australia, where we can also see a sharp increase in police brutality, where Arabic or Palestinian protesters, I assume that's what they are, they could be another heritage, they could be from Jordan, but Middle Eastern looking protesters, male, he's being taken down to the ground and he's being kidney punched. While he's already cuffed, he's being punched multiple times for no reason. So with this solar cycle, even if it's considered pseudoscience, the reality is, I've been watching this topic and looking at the subject, researching the subject since 2008, and there are so many different types of increases of violence, of strife, of conflict, physical, verbal, including spiritual warfare. So that's where we're going to start this podcast. You can go ahead and look at the specific news for yourself. We'll probably play some sound bites later of the news coverage. For example, in Pennsylvania, they were shot at, and it was several hours after a specific type of a prayer. I hear Sufi realities referring to this, the building up of the shield, the building up of spiritual protection, the zikr, tafakkur, excuse the mispronunciation, but tafakkur, something to that effect. It's a special type of a prayer that relates to the shielding around the human body, right? And then over in Utah, the largest mosque in the state, their leader, their imam, came under attack. The stalker was waiting for him outside of his house. He brandished a firearm. He was in his car. He began to dial 911. The guy pulled up to the right of him, got out, looked at him, put up the gun, and fired at him 8 times. Hit his windshield, hit his car, but he escaped unscathed. He survived. And he gives God all the credit, all the glory. That's not to say that other believers aren't killed. They are. And Sufi reality says that in this world there is struggle. There is, interference, if you will, the term that I've been using for years, archonic interference, actually. He speaks about things from his own life experience and from his own interpretation of that book, a more mystical Sufi interpretation than, say, others that are more orthodox, that normally don't look at subjects like that. People like my uncle that avoid it. But myself, it seems like I was born to speak about these things. It's something that I feel like I have a deep knowledge and sensitivity to. So that's what we're looking at this morning, and I'm sure some of you may have intuitive abilities that are on this newsletter, and some of you, might just be increasingly interested in the subject, which is mainstream now. And then in the future, we'll review more, so you start feeling more comfortable with this, mainstream articles in the past that talked about the solar effects, things that were published in Reuters. So you can see that in the past, journalists had more intellectual freedom to look at the obvious. Then, as time goes on, and we continue to go deeper and deeper into the Dark Ages, we need to ask ourselves, if there is an obvious correlation, why would the institutions of Earth be opposed to us learning about cause and effect, or the causes and conditions during certain periods that can lead to conflict? Why are people so threatened by this idea that we are connected to the stars, that we are connected to something, that we are not machines? So we'll be returning to that, and I'll be reading excerpts from various books. So we have also a story out of Manchester where two went in, at least one of them was black, showing that this wasn't just about white supremacy, and that's a point that I've been making for some time. Two individuals went in to a mosque with axes, other weapons, probably knives, and they were subdued. How they were subdued, I don't know, but there was, some mention in the article they were actually talking to the individual, leading me to wonder if they were, basically speaking, trying to talk sense to him. And talk him down from whatever he's going to do. Like, brother, we're not your enemy. You need to, shake off the shaitan. You need to wake up, brother. We're not your enemy. We're not here to hurt you. You have been lied to, brother. Something like that because these people are in a spell. Bringing us to our main point here. What's really going on? Because this is on the heels, right, the fourth attack in the West Bank being an arson at a mosque that at least destroyed the entrance. Okay, so this is a number of different events that took place during geomagnetic storms between the 22nd of February and the 24th of February. This is not necessarily like my favorite time of year, as it is the time period in which I was born, and birthdays have never been great times for me. Contemplating my entry into this world, or re-entry, leads to a lot of painful thoughts, like, what the fuck? What am I doing in this world? Birthdays for me, I don't exactly celebrate. I'm just in a state of awe, waiting for the other shoe to drop, basically. And so we're racing towards this planetary alignment and this lunar eclipse. And so I've been speculating for at least a couple of years now, but I've seen a lot more evidence in the last year that planetary alignments bring out racial hate. Prior to this, I noticed the connection with eclipses. Not just solar activity, but other types of celestial events, eclipses, alignments, things of that nature, that brings out not only strong solar activity, but a particular effect in aspects of the population that we typically don't see. Okay, so I'm looking at this period between the 22nd of February and the 24th, and there's a number of different stories we can talk about regarding mass shootings. A few of them are linked to my blog over at solarseer.substack.com, but right now we're just focused on this particular pattern of incidents. And we might ask ourselves some questions. Were the perpetrators following some sort of orders that were given in the physical world on paper, or more specifically via some sort of Telegram group? Like years ago they had to punish the Muslim Day in 2017. These things come in waves and cycles. There's almost like a demon portal opens up, and for a period of time people are willing to engage in a race war. And then a period of time follows, and they still have that evil within them, but they're no longer activated. They're no longer driven They're no longer super passionate about killing them all in the same way they were at that moment in time. So I've seen this, folks. Being that I've been talking this way, having this understanding about the solar effects for a long time, and I showed you that in past videos, and I'll continue to. So right now I'm working with the knowledge that I already accrued to help me interpret what's happening now. And believe it or not, it helps me stay calm. Believe it or not, with this knowledge, being armed, with this knowledge, I'm not ignorant. I'm in a state of knowledge and wisdom. Okay? And so Muslims could benefit from what I have to say. They can benefit from, and this is a very important thing to hear, they can benefit from hearing a perspective that uses science, such as the planetary K-index, to interpret periods in which what they call the waswas, spelled W-A-S-W-A-S, periods in which the waswas is above average. Now that is known as the devil's whispers. You know, you might think about the old, cartoon with Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse with the angel on one shoulder and the devil on another, for those of you that are newbies to this topic. The waswas would be like the devil, going kill, kill, kill. And anybody can be affected by the waswas. And somebody could be infected by the waswas to maybe do something bad to make their group look bad. Like, I think about that all the time. That's a good explanation for the legitimate, real acts of terrorism that we see, that these people aren't really spiritual. They're overtaken by the waswas or the devil's whispers. And they go out and they do something that is bad, that is actually against God. Well, that's actually the same thing that we're seeing from the people that are attacking the mosque. So we can look at it from a perspective of they organized it from a chat room, and they were basically cells that acted in unison, if you will, synchronized attack. Or we can look at it from another perspective that it was random, but yet it's connected in the sense that it happened in this short period in time. Now, going back and looking at the 22nd of February closer and the subsequent crime events that I do see in the news, it's actually almost distracting to get into all of those other stories, but there are other shootings of multiple people being shot or stabbed. And so the more and more I look at the data of the news, I get more confirmation, but it's also traumatizing. There are people in this world that if they get wind of somebody that has a perspective, like, oh, you think that there's a connection between these two, they'll immediately discriminate. I remember telling the manager of Wells Fargo in Pagosa Springs, when she asked what I did when I went in there and needed to get some help. And I told her, and I think I maybe told her about going on coast to coast, and it was just like maybe a 30-second soundbite about the connection between conflicts, wars, and Solar Maximum, and she immediately was like, oh, that's kooky. And for some reason I really held on to that, took that personal for many, many years. And during periods in which the solar flares are active, it causes us to ruminate more over the past and things that have been said. It was just last year that I went into a Schumann resonance group on Facebook, in which there's a lot of ignorance and a lot of people that are basically content staying in their state of mental illness and confusion as to why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. They're not getting all the data that they need, and they don't care about the world events or the crimes taking place, most especially the crimes against women. And we're talking about women here. I'll save you the long spiel about how I feel like I'm seeing a real level of misogyny that most people haven't discussed or talked about. But that's actually what I believe, that we're dealing with an unspoken misogyny, even amongst women. They don't care enough to actually do the homework to connect the dots. There's like a resistance here, and there's no point to have that resistance to looking at the trends and making the connections for yourself, and then adjusting your life properly to not be another statistic.